business is booming and you're making a profit. Well done. But should you reinvest in your business or invest personally instead? Then cybersecurity is a hot topic more than ever. We discuss what you can do to protect your financial information. And looking to buy or sell a business? Discover the formula for finding the right price. All this and more coming right up on The Wealthy Life. What is the best method to protect your financial information from being hacked?
I don't know. No idea.
Don't use shifty websites. Don't put out your credit card numbers, your passcodes, and just be careful about who you're doing business with.
And not sharing your information online on a regular basis.
Oh yeah, don't go on Facebook.
Your business is a success, but what do you do with the money? Today's guest is Bob Joseph, a small business owner producing some great results. Bob, welcome to the show.
Thank you, thank you.
So tell me about this business of yours.
Well, you know, I help people and companies and governments work effectively with Indigenous peoples, and I go across the country and America, Latin America, all kinds of neat places.
Now, does that keep you busy?
It does. It keeps me way too busy sometimes.
I can imagine. What are some of the things that people need training on when it comes to working together?
I think, you know, the big piece is intercultural communications, that we can have conversations with people and think we're talking about the same thing, but we're actually not. And what happens is we can use words that mean completely different things to other people, and it creates friction and tension and breaks down communication.
You know, clear communication is the key to everyone getting along, isn't it?
Yeah. And especially if we can have those conversations in a way in which we share the same history, and culture would be almost impossible, but education, and like I say, those are the kinds of things that can really get people into a lot of trouble, especially working across cultures.
Yeah, you don't want to say the wrong things to the wrong people, you don't want to offend, you don't want to tick people off, and you want business to be done at the end of the day. Who hires you? Is it multiple people?
Yeah, so we train everybody from the Ontario SPCA right through to Government of Canada and British Columbia and Alberta and Ontario, to local governments across the country, and then everywhere from retailers, big brand name retailers and the Fortune 100. So it's kind of a neat opportunity.
So what would the average person learn from going through some of your training programs?
Well, I came out of an engineering firm, so we start off with a little bit of history, a little bit of culture. One of the neat things about Aboriginal peoples, Indigenous peoples in Canada, is that they're not really a homogenous group of people. That there's actually 11 major language families, 50 different dialects. Wow. And so we go through a little bit of that, and then we provide a business case. Here's why a retailer should go and work effectively with Indigenous peoples. And then we get into now how should we do that? What should we say and not say? And how should we conduct ourselves at meetings? And we really get into that kind of protocol. So in terms of, it would be like being an international trader, though. You know, we wouldn't send you to another country in the world without understanding a little bit about the culture and a little bit about the different legal framework that applies. And when we talk about Indigenous peoples in Canada, it's like the exact same thing. There's different cultures and a different legal framework. So we're really going from international relations to intranational relations. That's sort of a distinction that a diplomat once shared with me.
Well, it sounds a little bit complex, but probably simple when you boil it down at the end of the day. But I know that the average person I talk to still to this day commonly ask, myself included, what to say and what not to say. And thank goodness, Bob, you've actually written a little book on 23 tips on what not to say or do when working with Indigenous people. Yeah. Contact us at thewealthylife.com and we'll email you a free copy. That's great. So with this business booming, there's a demand for it.
Yes.
Are you making money?
Lots of it. That's my problem. I've got a whole bunch, just not really have seen this before, you know.
How many years have you been doing this?
Well, I left on my own in 2002 to start this company, and the sales were sort of steady the first few years, and we weren't really able to break through. And just in the last couple, we've really broken through to we were always running a really lean machine, and then just a whole bunch of revenues came in. We started to do public workshops, and it just was, yeah, anyways, crazy.
This is a nice problem to have.
It's a good problem, absolutely.
Bob, what's your big question for me today?
So I have all of this money sitting there. What do I do with it? Do I keep it in the business? Do I try to find some way to take it out, invest it? You know, I'm just curious about.
Well, I'll walk you through how to answer that question. Don't go away. Find out the tax implications of investing business profits after the break.
The Wealthy Life is brought to you by investment dealer Raymond James. Life well planned. See what a Raymond James advisor can do for you.
Welcome back. We're here with Bob to see if he should reinvest his company profits or pull the money out to invest personally. Bob, congratulations. It sounds like your business is a huge success, and now you've got all this money and you don't know what to do with it. Before I answer that question, tell me what your future vision is for your business.
I think, well, personally, you know, probably like a lot of other entrepreneurs, I think I could probably keep going for another 20 years. You know, it's fairly straightforward work, but maybe my health doesn't let me do that. So I need to start thinking about maybe selling the business or transferring it in the family. So I've been talking to my boy about, you know, maybe taking on a role with us. And
how old's your boy?
21. He's not really a boy anymore. He doesn't like me calling him that either.
Is he interested in the business?
He is actually. He went out and he did some work on his own for about a year, and before he went out and did that, and he's still going to university.
Good. It's great for them to try it on their own first, go live in the real world, and then come back and learn the family business.
Exactly. And I think, he really is excited about that. So I am too. I thought, well, the first time I talked to him about it, would you be interested in joining? Well, I don't really think so, and I thought, oh, great, he wants to be his own man and do his own thing, and so that would be awesome if he did.
Is it capital intensive, your business? Is there a lot of expenses that go into it?
No, you know what? So we go out and we train our clients on site, and so it's their building, their lighting, their projectors, they bring the coffee and everything like that, and I've worked really hard to actually not have infrastructure. We have a toll-free North America phone and fax number that you can call from anywhere.
Fax? What's a fax?
Yeah, exactly. And I do have office space, but really I don't use it. Mail goes there. I mean, it's about as efficient as you can get.
How about advertising? Do you have to spend much money on advertising, or is word of mouth doing the trick?
Really, you know what it is? Blogging. So that the blogging really drives the business. We have over 80,000 visitors a month coming to our website right now. And it doesn't hurt that you've written a couple of books, too, does it?
Exactly. Working effectively with Indigenous peoples, 21 things you may not know about the Indian Act. Who should read these books?
You know what? Well, I know there's 80,000 different people a month that come in and they download free versions of which, but people, teachers, governments, businesses, people committed to reconciliation.
So your target market, essentially, and this builds credibility for hiring you.
Absolutely.
So it doesn't sound like you need to reinvest back in the business, which is one of the things that we look at when deciding whether to leave the money in the business or pull it out.
Yeah.
The tax deferral benefits of leaving it in versus pulling it out aren't quite the same anymore. The government's tax regime has changed so that it's not really that advantageous to leave it in. It used to be more advantageous to leave it in. If you pull it out, you'll have to claim it as either income or a dividend, but then you could put it into an RSP. And it sounds like for you, you're more concerned with making sure your retirement income is protected, and at some point you want to slow down the business or working in the business so your son can take over. Until you make up your mind on what that looks like, leaving the money in the business is a good place to start. I would suggest, though, that you work with your accountant to run through the specific numbers in your case to see if it's now time to pull out more of an income, contribute it to an RSP, or maybe even set up an individual pension plan.
There you go. I like it.
Great. Well, I wish you all the luck with your business, and thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Stay tuned. Learn what cybersecurity is and how it impacts your financial information when we return.
The Wealthy Life is brought to you by investment dealer Raymond James. Life well planned. See what a Raymond James advisor can do for you.
Your most valuable information is stored on your trusty computer. But how do you protect it against hackers? With us today is Diane LaPierre, Chief Information Officer, to discuss cybersecurity and how to protect your information. Diane, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sybil. I'm thrilled to be here.
This is an exciting topic.
It is.
How did you get interested in information technology and computers and this realm?
Well, I've always been a bit of a born academic. Loved to read as a child, although I wasn't necessarily a computer nerd. I moved into business management, and from there the opportunities for information technology came forward, and there's nothing more exciting in information technology these days than cybersecurity.
Oh, I bet. What keeps you up at night?
Cybersecurity, or really cyber threat. I mean, there are a lot of what we call adversaries everywhere in the world today, and they're not only after our money, they're also after our identity and our information. And so those are the things that really are most precious to us and that we need to protect.
Why can't everyone just get along and do the right thing and treat everyone well?
We have to assume that nobody will. That's the approach that we take.
So what does cybersecurity really mean?
It really means protecting the digital information that we have. So not the actual assets that we have like our homes or our cars, but the digital information, which is information about our money, and then most importantly, information about ourselves.
What are the common types of attacks you see happening?
The most common thing today really is what we call phishing, and we spell that with a PH, not an F.
Okay.
So phishing really means attempts by adversaries to get your information, either your credit card information, your passwords and banking information, those types of things. And I think the most important thing to remember is no legitimate organization, no bank, the CRA, nobody is going to come and ask you for that information.
No.
That's not going to happen. So when you get the email that looks like it's from your bank and it's telling you that something is happening with your account, and the email tells you to put that information into a site that it directs you to, don't go there. Don't pick up the phone and call a number that they send you. Instead, check the information directly with the institution. Go on the website yourself independently, find the contact information of that bank or that financial services organization and call them directly.
And make sure it's legit, because most of the time it's not.
No institution or CRA will come to you and ask for that information over the internet.
Now, my husband recently had this happen. He got an email from CRA. It had the right logo.
Absolutely.
It looked exactly like a CRA email. It even had the right language.
Yes.
And it said, you have a small refund. We've done a reassessment. You have a small refund of $148. So it wasn't even big to raise any red flags.
Yeah.
It said, just click here to reply.
Yeah.
He clicked. Oops. He started filling out some information, then he caught himself and he said, no way, this isn't right.
Nope.
He called me and I had a look. And when we actually looked at the return email, it said CRA, but when you click on information, it had some garbly goop in there, and we knew for sure it was a scam.
Not CRA. The other one that's happening right now, we're hearing about, is Microsoft impersonation. People are surfing the net, and all of a sudden a window pops up and says, oh, your computer may be compromised. Call us here at Microsoft and we'll help you. And when you call, you get what sounds like a Microsoft help desk. They ask for if they can access your computer.
Oh,
of course
no.
you say yes because you're afraid what's happening with your computer.
It's Microsoft.
Yay!
But it's not.
It's not Microsoft. In those situations, the adversaries are putting programs in your computer to capture information later, capture information as you're doing other processes like paying your bills, doing your banking, whatever, and that information is then being siphoned to the adversaries. Again, that Microsoft is never going to do that. If you have a problem with your computer, you contact Microsoft.
You look up the number.
You look up the number.
Now that brings me to the question of passwords.
Yes.
Because they phish and try and get passwords.
Right.
How do you set a good password and how do you remember it?
Well,
There's
that's
so
the
many.
trick. I mean, there's all sorts of approaches that various organizations are telling you about capitals and letters and numbers and the size of your password. The problem is the more complex we make our passwords, the more likely we are to write them down so we don't forget them.
Yes.
Or the more likely we are to replicate them across many different applications. And that really is the problem. So a trick that we like to use in the cybersecurity world is using a password phrase. So rather than coming up with a word, particularly a word that I can relate to you, like your birthday or your kid's name or your dog's name, instead I choose a phrase. The phrase is meaningless to me. Might be a nursery rhyme, might be the line of a favorite song.
Okay.
Now, sure, I could put a whole line of a favorite song. That's not going to fit in a 10-letter password. So what I do is I write down that phrase or that line of a favorite song, and I start by taking the first letter of each word, and that becomes my password.
Oh, brilliant.
So if Mary had a little lamb, its fleece was white as snow, there's 12 letters for a password, and I can just use ML, I could use 1 for A. I can do some things to mix that up. So now I've got a password. Now it comes time to change my password or use that for another application.
Yes.
I can now move to the second letter of that phrase. So instead of using the M for Mary, I'm going to use the A in Mary, and so on and so on. And I can just go cycling through those letters.
That's great.
And if I have trouble remembering which letter have I used, then I can keep track of simply a number. I can say, my bank, I'm using number 3. Well, I'm not using number 3, I'm using the third letter in my phrase. I'm never writing down my phrase. I don't want anybody to
pick
tie it back, right? But I'm helping myself remember, and I'm now on number 3. Or for the bank, I use number 3.
I'm guessing Mary Had a Little Lamb is not going to be
my
your
password.
password.
No. Pick something, relatively obscure to you, a meaningful song perhaps, or a line of poetry that you like. Pick something that you're going to remember, but isn't necessarily tied to you.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
I've got just a few seconds left for a short question and answer.
Yeah.
How do you protect your data?
Protecting your data, in addition to your password and doing all the right things, is also about making sure you have a backup. And it's not just your financial information. Frankly, most of our financial information we could recreate. But think about the pictures that we have on our computer. Think about those things that we really don't want to lose. That's where, for a small cost, one can buy a separate storage device, encrypted, and on a regular basis, back up everything on your hard drive. And then make sure you store that backup somewhere else. Ideally, in a safety deposit box, but even just in another room. So if, heaven forbid, your house is broken into and they take your computer, they're not going to necessarily take that box that's in your underwear drawer. You're going to deal with it that way.
Diane, this has been invaluable. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Well, you're very welcome, Sybil. I've really enjoyed it.
And when we return, discover what your business is worth. Welcome back. Thanks for your letters, emails, tweets, and messages. Today's question is from Letitia in Toronto. Dear Sybil, I am one of 4 owners in a fitness studio here in Toronto. Each of us owns 25% of the business, and we generated $100,000 in profits last year, above our salaries. One owner wants to sell, but the price she wants seems too high to the rest of us. How do we know what's fair? We don't want to pay too much. What are our options? Many thanks, Letitia. Well, this is a great question, and one important point you forgot to mention is the business better with her or without her? because that may affect the price. If things are running smoothly and you don't want her to leave, maybe you can entice her to stay. If things are getting a little bit awkward and there's friction between the business owners, maybe it's worth paying a little bit higher price to buy her out so that your business can continue to blossom as the years go by. Really, when it comes to setting a formula for pricing your business, there's no one size fits all. The true price is whatever is agreed upon between the seller and the buyer. That being said, there's a couple of guidelines I suggest you go by. Typically, 2 to 3 times the annual profits is a common and fair price to pay to buy a business. That being said, many people pay up to 5 years' worth of profits to buy a business. It depends on how sustainable the business is in the future and what are the opportunities to see even higher profits as we go forward. Since your business is making $100,000 a year in profits above salaries, that's $25,000 for that one seller to buy her out. If you multiply that by the 2 to 3 year formula I suggested, it's a total of $75,000 to have her walk away and now the 3 of you take over. That seems pretty reasonable. If she's wanting more, perhaps up to $125,000, which is 5 years worth, then maybe it's worth looking at. One other consideration is you want to make sure you don't have additional expenses after she leaves. Are you going to have to hire somebody else? And are your revenues going to be continuing at the same rate they're continuing at now? I hope that helps answer your question. I would recommend you run that by your accountant before you make a decision. And that wraps up this edition of The Wealthy Life, helping Canadians make smart financial decisions. Go to thewealthylife.com to become a member and receive free exclusive access to Wealthy Life workbooks, calculators, articles, and more to help you make the most out of what you have.